Hi, Tim Emerson of Kuan Yin Healing. So, if you've been watching these videos, you've looked at why I created the healing journey. You've looked at what are some things you can do yourselves. And you may have wondered, why would I be showing you things that you can do yourselves? Why do I have low cost and even free options for self-healing when I run a healing business? And the answer is truly there are much of things that you can and in fact probably should simply handle yourselves. But today we're going to look at what are the reasons you might not want to handle something yourself. When do you know which is which? So one of the reasons is that sometimes working by ourselves, it's very difficult to know the correct problem. I remember once as a young music student, the muscles in my neck were like, it was excruciatingly painful. I could barely stand it. And it actually turned out, at that time I was under a lot of tension, and it was every muscle was pulling on every other group, and it was actually my leg muscles actually that were pulling on everything else. And so a very smart doctor got me to use a tennis ball and roll these legs, and it relaxed everything. I would never have figured that out by itself. How do you do something? Well, doing a comprehensive approach like the healing journey can let you find these sorts of things, to really look at everything from a different standpoint and look through it. I used to tell people, Michael Jordan has a coach. It's not because the coach is a better basketball player. Very often also, another pitfall of self-healing, we kind of get used to the status quo. We get used to the pain. It kind of becomes our identity. We almost wouldn't know what we would do without it. And so we suffer with things that we don't have to do that. We have rationalizations and justifications for things that flatly aren't working. Also, being honest with ourselves is very difficult. I'm sure this has happened to you. It happens to me. Very often, your friend, a partner, somebody makes an observation, and sometimes it's a little difficult because you realize the truth of it, but at the same time, we're blind of it. So again, by being systematic and comprehensive, we get a chance to look through all these things without it being a fix this, fix this, fix this, how do I know what to fix? We look at everything, and it allows kind of the space to do that. It's very hard also to see ourselves from the highest perspective, and when we're working right directly from this kind of energy, we can start to do that. So to quickly, what I'm saying is sometimes it's difficult to see the correct problem. Very often we kind of cling to pain. We get used to it. Being honest with ourselves is difficult. It's hard to see ourselves as our higher selves with our own eyes because we're the perspective. So those are some pitfalls. But then going further than that, often when we're looking at healing, there's emotional and or mental healing involved. And these are very difficult to handle alone, to get past. Even when the problems aren't that great, it's just a difficult thing. Very often healing brings up stuff that's been going on for a while. Sometimes we don't even have that, that context. Sometimes we're afraid, actually, to go in and look that things have been buried that long. Sometimes we want to look at healing when the problem is significant. It's more than a cold, it's more than the flu. Sometimes it's a matter of, there are a lot of things I can do myself, but this is outside of my experience, at least at this point. I need help with this, rather than choosing to simply live with it. If you have a condition that's chronic, it's intractable, either it's untreatable by traditional medicine or it's treatable but you're getting insufficient results. So maybe you're getting some results with self-healing but not the kind of results you want. Then you might want to consider holistic healing of some sort to explore the root causes and their potential resolutions. Also, there are practical limits to the time we have. There are things I could maybe figure out, but often simply going to somebody else who already has systems and can do this, can do this. And that's the primary way that I see the work of an experienced healer. It's a key way I see my own work anyway, is that of a catalyst, of helping to speed things up, okay, to get to a desired conclusion sooner. So one of the things that we really look at when we're looking at a systemic thing like the healing journey is that there are levels of healing that have to work together that we don't usually look at and are hard to look at when we're doing self-healing. So starting with the levels of being, we are physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual on a couple different level beings. All of those things are important because all of those things are part of our makeup. It's not like nesting little dolls. It's a continuum of energy that affects everything along this strand. So we think of, it's pretty common, for example, to think of ourselves as physical. And so one of the things, if we're really going to undergo a real journey, is a lot of that's going to have to be changed. So a healing journey has to start really with a new sense of grounding before everything starts shifting and shaking, right? We need that kind of a balancing grounding work to start off. And then we can really start to look at the physical work and the kinds of changes that we're going to make in our physical world. If we want different things to happen, we're going to have to do different things. Lots of times we'll talk about this. I know this, but it doesn't happen. There are emotional reasons why we have done things or are doing things or are not doing things. Those have to be looked at, those sorts of changes. And then the sorts of thought processes that are creating that situation, that energy, those circumstances. So here's the thing. If, at a lot of different traditions, and certainly, for example, the Buddha taught, the mind is the general. Everything comes from that. But the mind can also be a tyrant and trying to run the entire show. So we have physical, emotional, mental. Then we have higher realms, but it's the conscious mind where we, and at least in the West, we really often focus our efforts trying to run everything like this, and it's often unsuccessful. So looking at the mind, when we talk about the mind, we're often referring to specifically the conscious mind, which is really just a very small set of the larger mind, especially the subconscious mind. So when we're looking at our will, we're using only a small part of the energy that's actually available to us. And so if we already, and here's another thing, if we're already in a poor balance, okay, already we don't have the health or happiness and the results we're looking for, and then we push our will onto it, we're going to push it even further off balance. And it's a conundrum. We kind of start to perpetuate or even make worse the situation we're trying to fix. A beautiful way of looking at the tarot card, the Lovers, illustrates this person perfectly. You have the man representing the will who's looking to the side at the subconscious, the woman, and the subconscious, the woman, is looking ahead, overhead to the angel. And this is really understanding that triangle is really the way to understand the proper use of the mind. And that's not something that we do easily. Even then, we're only part way there. We talk about the triangle of mind, body, and spirit, right? Or mind, emotions, and physical as our physical world. And then up above that, kind of a soul self of a higher mind, the Buddhic plane, and the divine. But, even then, there's a still higher self of our higher self, our energetic spark, and truly the divine. It's where the 333 vibration comes from, of ascension. And we tend to talk about a soul that goes from thing to thing to thing. But if you look at the writings, for example, of the Buddha and several others going back into the Vedas and other ancient writings, it specifically makes clear is like there's no soul either. This is simply our ego. What we are really is consciousness. So we have this battle between, on the one hand, our conscious mind and our will and pushing, and what we really are, which is just a sense of consciousness, which is how we go from various states to various states within our lives and beyond. So that's a very hard thing kind of to wrap our heads around, and that really, but it's the heart of beginning to understand our connection to energy in all things. We're consciousness interacting with all of source energy. So when we actually do healing work at this level, and we're really working with the magnetic spectrum, we're, again, going back to ancient times. The ancient Taoists talked about finding and walking ley lines. The Australian Aborigines, walk the energetic ley lines of the earth. It's really interesting. The Arctic foxes, when they're hunting mice going in different directions, they miss frequently unless they're facing north. If they're facing due north, they hit it every time. They're right energetically aligned. So healing work is about helping, this is beyond our conscious mind, but it's about going beyond that to that alignment, to that connection, to that consciousness source energy. And when you do that, all these different parts start to work better. We get past, you are kind of stepping over that conscious mind general into the energy that creates it in the first place, and you can bypass a lot of things very, very quickly. Another way to think of it is in terms of dimensions. We tend to think of being in 3 to 4, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions if we consider time. But it's interesting that both ancient writings and mathematicians point out that there are 11. Modern mathematicians point out 11 dimensions. It's really fascinating. A little bit beyond my conscious mind, I will readily admit. But here again, here's what energy healing can do for us. It's not a question of magic, it's understanding different dimensions. So if I only understood 2 dimensions, okay, to get from here over to here, is kind of a long, dangerous, over-the-edge kind of trip. But if I understand dimensions, I can drill a hole and just go right through, almost instantly. And it's not magic, it's simply understanding things. On the other hand, if I'm doing this by myself and I'm dragging things with me, let's say I'm chained right here, and I drill through and I go to the other side, I may be on the other side, but I'm still chained. So this is the kind of things with energy healing we get past, is moving past that limited thinking and jumping into something that's a much more powerful, a much more effective frame of mind, frame of being, in fact, that lets us become realigned with our source energy. It's why in healing we often get emotional relief. We often get mental insights, as well as leaps in physical healing. So how do we start to step outside? This is what the healing journey does, is let us go through a systematic and comprehensive approach so to take the mysticism out of it so that we can really be sure that we're walking through to some sort of good results. So, again, starting off with grounding, we can't get changes if we're not going to make any changes, right? That's just an argument for, I want to stay here in the status quo, and so we will. One of the reasons for outside help is to help us let go of the patterns that we keep repeating over and over and over again. In the sense of physical healing, it's very common. I fall into this myself. We'll say, oh, yeah, I know this, I know, I know, I'm familiar with that, and yet I'm not doing it. And if I'm not doing it, how well do I honestly know it? Is this really something I've internalized and understand, for it's like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and yet skip breakfast right and left, right? I don't really know that, or I'm not really convinced. So there's work to be done there. But often just simply as simple as holding ourselves accountable when we have to talk to somebody else about it. So not that I'm going to hold you accountable either, but we start to recognize this ourselves. Simply looking at what's working, what's not working, stop doing what's not working. It sounds so obvious, but it's so hard to do because we're creatures of habit. So looking at the physical world and making those sorts of changes. Looking at the emotional world, I mean, how much of all our time, right, gets taken up by frustration and overwhelm and concern about other people who are doing things or not doing things and so forth. And we're truly stuck here. It's truly a waste of energy. There's nothing productive about it. It makes things even worse, right? It's not naming a problem at all. It's really doubling down on one. And it's difficult. Very often in emotions, we're getting over one emotional situation, and actually we kind of maybe overreacted or overstated a little bit, and actually getting better, and so we should be happy now, but we still have the energy of the negative as the good ones moving in, and now we're like, we have the brakes on even though things are good. These are kind of things that are going to need, that very often are candidates, certainly for healing. We send ourselves a message. And very often when we're having a negative emotional message, it's opening our eyes to a truth. In the same way that physical pain does. If I put my hand on a hot stove, I'm going to quickly take it off, and it's a really good thing. And yet we kind of miss that point about emotional pain. Rarely do we say, oh yeah, there's a message, there's a truth here I'm not looking at. Good thing I got this alert. No, we tend to stay there and wallow in it and burn and fester. We need healing for those sorts of things. It's a very common human reaction. When we get to mental issues, what are the patterns that we're stuck in? And I think this is, again, a pretty common thing. We keep doing the same things again and again, expecting different results. We need outside insights. We need an interrupter. We need somebody to energetically our higher selves energetically pick us up by the scruff of the neck and carry us over somewhere else, right? So those patterns that we have set in motion our beliefs, whether they're true or not, it doesn't matter, because our beliefs are what dictate what becomes our actions, and our actions dictate what becomes our experiences, which then reinforces our beliefs, and now we're stuck in this pattern. See, I was right. And we will be if in that regard. So how do we interrupt that and go in a different way so that we have positive results and impacts? That very often takes outside things. Look at the stories we tell ourselves, right? The stories we tell ourselves. At some level, we're always right, or we're always the victim, or we're always the good one somehow, and everybody else has similar stories. To really step back and look at that carefully is difficult. And to look at this from the standpoint, as the old shaman used to say, probably still do, when did you stop telling stories? When did you stop dancing? Right? When did you stop singing? There are signs early on that something is wrong, that needs healing, that's going to become mental, emotional, and eventually physical things. At the spiritual level, we tend to talk about spiritual selves in extremely vague ways, and yet this is really where the action truly is once we've done the rest of the work. At a human level of being, we have two different spiritual planes in which we are still have individual consciousness of some sort, the Buddhic plane and the Atma. And there are two different levels. We confuse what we say spirit is actually the higher mind, the causal body. When we confuse this, we really don't know how to work this. But we try to think, I'm going to be above this, I'm going to be spiritual, and I'll be more spiritual, and then I'll really have this. And we're doubling down when we do that on ego. And that's still a mind thing. So when we're struggling, we're still separate. And really to step out and say, okay, I need help, I need connection, I need to meld with Source, is when we start to see the differences. And because we continually manifest something over and over again. Deepak Chopra talks about his experience with cancer patients. He's not the only one who says this, by the way. Where a cancer will come, it will go again, and depending on what's going on in the patient's mind and what their beliefs are, it's really kind of a fascinating area of study. So to start to dissolve these sorts of problems, we need to look at different ways to be spiritual, to be aware. When we're looking for results, this is as if we were to use a forest metaphor, like a canopy, like the forest canopy, very lush and green, and this is something we want. But underneath that forest canopy is a root system that is far more extensive. And we need to build the root system and the source energy and that kind of support and that kind of systematic thing, so that the canopy can then not only be put in place, but flourish, okay, and to continue to grow. The ancient Vedas, talk about three aspects of creation: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma is the source creation. Vishnu, the sustainer. Let's keep everything the way it is. If you love status quo, you love Vishnu. And lots of incarnations of Vishnu. And then Shiva, the destroyer. And yet creation comes from destruction, right? We take ingredients, we rip them apart and put them together in different ways. So if we want to grow and change, something's got to be let go. Okay, and we're right back to that. It's difficult to find the real problem. What are the things we need to let go of? So we need that connection to higher self. We need that connection to the divine. We need that infusion, really, of flowing source energy before we can truly heal, or we can just kind of go in circles, and that's exactly what a lot of people do, go in circles. I wrote a blog post a while ago called Rivers and Rocks. We tend to see ourselves as rocks, kind of going through the earth. But we're rivers. We're energy. We're constant energy coming in. We're constant energy going out. We're constant cells coming in, constant cells going out. We're not a thing at all. We're a nexus of energy. And energy healing really focuses on that essential reality. And once we understand that what we're really looking for is a better, more energetic flow, one that's better connected, one that's better integrated with all the things, then we can truly understand that that's really what health and happiness means. And when we understand that that's really what health and happiness means, then it becomes easy to see the key message of Kuan Yin healing is that better health and happiness are possible now, right? Simply by improving that flow. That's what energy healing is about. And that's what the healing journey of going through and looking at everything comprehensively is about. Okay?